Welcome to Design Domination, where you'll learn to become a better, more business-savvy designer so you can dominate your competition. Hi, and thanks for tuning in. I'm Colleen Grotzer, and in this episode of Design Domination, I'm talking about why website accessibility overlays and plugins are not the answer to achieving accessibility on a website. Now, if website accessibility is new to you, you can get an overview about it and find out why you should care, who it affects, how many it affects, and additional information in episode 53, Design with Accessibility in Mind. I wanted to do an episode about accessibility overlays and plugins because I feel it's my duty, based on my accessibility background, to educate you about this topic. I've been in the accessibility space since 2016, designing and remediating, which means fixing, accessible InDesign files that get published as PDFs, providing accessibility training at the U.S. Department of the Interior, designing and developing accessible websites, and most recently, launching a website accessibility course. The reason for bringing this up is because I see a lot of web designers and developers asking for help in Facebook groups after they've gotten a request from a client to make their website accessible. Whether that's to ADA laws in the United States, in which case the client usually refers to as ADA compliance, or to Section 508 or another law. Those are just a couple U.S. laws, but accessibility is a worldwide effort. The problem is that a lot of people respond to these posters in these groups with links to accessibility overlays or plugins that purport to be, or are perceived to be, quick fixes to accessibility. But these are not the answer to achieving compliance, and I'm going to get into why. Okay, so first, let's talk about what an accessibility overlay is. Like some accessibility plugins, an overlay is used to detect and fix accessibility issues on a website. An accessibility overlay is installed by simply adding one or a few lines of code of JavaScript to the site. It modifies the site usually only at the browser level and not touching the site's code. The site gets analyzed, and then poof, the site is now magically fully accessible and compliant within a day or two, and then it performs regular checks and fixes to ensure ongoing compliance. I mean, that sounds great, right? Many of the claims made by the vendors of these accessibility overlays sound way too good to be true. Let's take a look at some of them. Just insert this code and your site will be accessible. Scanning and fixing your site will be done every 24 hours or, whatever time frame they're offering. Overlays have a higher success rate than accessibility services. And they provide compliance to many laws, including ADA, Section 508, EN 301549, and WCAG 2.1 AA guidelines. Now, I noticed some touting 100% compliance, and then others said up to 50% compliance for X price, and then up to 95% compliance for a higher price. Well, what if the site ends up being in 25% compliance? I mean, that sounds like it would still be what they're promising, but your client's going to get screwed. And just a side note, ironically, a lot of these overlay vendors have accessibility issues on their own sites that are using their own overlays. Let's talk about problems with the accessibility overlays. There are some things that an automated tool can check for and fix. Industry experts estimate that about 25% to 30% of accessibility issues can actually be detected. Those are the more cut and dry issues. Some other issues may be able to be found but not fixed properly or at all. About 70 to 75% need to be dealt with manually. That means reviewed by a person and not done with an automated tool. So let's get into some of the specific problems with accessibility overlays. Overlays provide a false sense of security. I did some checking of several sites that use an accessibility overlay, and I found them to have a plethora of compliance issues. Carl Groves of Tenon, the company who did the accessibility audit of WordPress Gutenberg, made a video talking about his testing of sites with accessibility overlays with his tool. And I highly recommend watching it, and the link for that is in the show notes. In looking at these vendors' terms of service, I saw that one of them said that use of the product means the client is waiving any right to make a claim against them. But on the homepage, they tout full compliance. But their terms say otherwise, and their pricing says otherwise, because the pricing is saying up to whatever percentage of compliance. The overlay adds functionality to the site that should already inherently be there. And that's either from using the proper code in the first place, or it's from the operating system or the browser. The user might be required to use the overlay to get around the site instead of what they're used to using, which could be a keyboard or a screen reader. When I was on a site with one vendor's overlay, I couldn't use the tab key to go through the page via the keyboard. I had to actually use the overlay's keyboard functionality, which kept looping me in and out of that option. This is frustrating, and it really makes for a poor user experience because it's changing the way that someone is used to getting around a website. Not only that, it's requiring them to take an additional step to do so. It's kind of like saying, hey, our website is best viewed in such and such browser, so go switch. But it's worse than that. Interestingly enough, after using the overlay keyboard navigation feature on the one vendor's site, I was not able to go back and use the site properly. I wasn't able to search for text on the page or to open developer tools. And that's even after clearing the cache. When I tried another browser, I was unable to quit out of the browser. If you've got to figure out or explain to users how to get around your website, that's a huge fail. Accessibility overlays don't fix unclear link text. Checking one of the sites using an overlay, I noticed social media icons. I then went to them using a screen reader. I didn't hear Facebook, Twitter, and whatever the other one was, as I should have. Instead, I heard link, new window for each of them. Now, I can tell what these icons are for because I'm a sighted user. But those who have low vision or who are blind won't be able to tell what those icons are for, where the link is taking them. On another site using an overlay, a shopping site, I saw several products on a page, each with buy now links under each product. Again, I can tell what they're for as a sighted user, but someone using a screen reader won't know if they are multiple links for the same product that go to the same page, or if some or all of them are different. On another site with an overlay, I found several color contrast errors that had not been addressed by their tool. So that means that anyone with low vision may not be able to make out what that text says. It was just too light against the background. If an overlay can address this, what color will it choose for that element? It might just lighten or darken the existing color, which may alter the site's design. But if you, as the designer or the developer, are in control of this, you can determine if that color is okay, or if you should choose a different, more suitable color from the client's brand color palette instead. Visiting yet another site using an overlay, I checked the heading order and saw that had not been resolved either. Heading order is important because it creates a structure for the content on the page. It helps sighted users and those with low or no vision to understand the page hierarchy. Now, what about paragraph text that should be a heading, or headings that should be body text? A tool isn't going to be able to make that call. There could be paragraph text, tables, or even a set of images that should be styled as a list, for example. If an overlay were to detect multiple lines of text in a row that end with a BR tag instead of an end paragraph tag, it cannot tell if these should be in a list or if they should be inside their own paragraph tags. In other words, are they supposed to be list items or are they just short paragraphs? Accessibility overlays cannot tell if an image has improper or inadequate alt text. Take, for instance, an image of a pie chart. The alt text could potentially say, image of a pie chart. The blue pie piece represents 25%, the orange piece 50%, and the green piece 25%. Someone who's been blind since birth won't know or care which color is which. They need to know what the data means, not what it looks like. Plus, information cannot be conveyed with color alone. So an automated tool might detect that the image has alt text and just leave it alone. Now, on the other side, there are situations where images that are considered decorative have alt text, but should not. Now, what about images that contain text that aren't crisp? Say they get pixelated when the page content is magnified. The overlay cannot suddenly produce a better resolution image out of thin air. It may also be able to detect what the text says, but that will rely on factors like the clarity of the image resolution, how easy to read that particular typeface is, and if the text is placed over a background pattern or other text, making it harder to make out. I also found cases of form fields that did not have labels associated with them. And so that means that anyone who can't see the text near the form fields cannot tell what to do with each form field. Yeah, there might be placeholder text in those fields, but those with low vision might not be able to read the placeholder text because placeholder text is usually very light. Now, if the overlay can add labels, are they going to be the correct ones? If they aren't, then the user could fill out information in the wrong field. In that case, they may get alerts to errors in fields that they don't understand how to fix because, for example, they've just typed their email address in the first name field, let's say, and then they get alerted that those characters are not allowed in that field. Well, if they cannot determine which field they're in, and the error message isn't specific, that just compounds the problem. There are also cases of improper use of ARIA with accessibility overlays. ARIA can be added to HTML tags to enhance accessibility, so when someone is using assistive technology, but can really screw things up when it's not done properly. Accessibility overlays affect the performance, the speed of the site. Some of the functions of the overlay may be more taxing than others. How much will that slow a site down? Keep in mind that Google uses speed as a factor to give sites a boost in search engine rank. So how much of a hit to the performance is going to affect that site's rankings? Not only that, but if the site is slow, then visitors will leave. So there's a lot of potential for getting less traffic and frustrating those who are coming to the site. Accessibility overlays can affect branding. The first aspect being the design, and I've gone into some of those already. A client likely invested a good bit of money into the design, only to now have it change out of their control and yours by the overlay. But where overlays don't address accessibility issues, there's another aspect of branding to consider, which can definitely affect the bottom line. The business could be perceived as having a negative reputation on diversity for having an inaccessible website. People with a disability are 3 times as likely to avoid a business with an inaccessible website and twice as likely to dissuade others from doing business with it. And that's according to the Australian Human Rights Commission. There's also custom overlays. And custom overlays are not robust. They can break as changes in the code are made to the site or when the site is just maintained. Some overlays actually exacerbate accessibility issues. Now, if you change your theme, you open up a whole new can of worms. Accessibility overlays can present a potential vulnerability and security due to the inserted JavaScript. Something to consider is how securely are the vendors maintaining their servers? And will they report security issues? And who's going to be the one to pay to clean up the site if it gets hacked? In terms of financial costs with an overlay, and custom ones cost even more, the client is continually throwing money at something that doesn't address the underlying issues. I mean, let's think about that for a second. If you have a leaky pipe, are you going to continually put down towels and a bucket to catch the water? Or are you going to have the darn pipe repaired before the water does more damage and then you have to replace flooring and drywall? So overlays are not a long-term solution. It's like putting lipstick on a pig. Companies and organizations end up throwing money at the wrong solution when they can invest in fixing the site and getting training. Now, potential legal fees that could arise from not having an accessible site include fines, settlement fees, lawyer fees for both sides, plus eventual remediation costs. And again, remediation is, fixing the site. Plus, even if the client gets sued, it doesn't mean they can't get sued again. A court could order them to fix the site within a certain period of time, and someone else could come along and go after them within that same time frame. I've heard of the fees ranging anywhere from $4,000 to $100,000. Will the vendors of these overlays pay these fees on yours and your client's behalf if the worst happens? And yes, I said yours because I've heard stories where a client has sued their developers after they've been sued, and they go back to them to recoup the fees that they've just had to pay. Not only that, there was a case with the Wet Willie's bar chain where the plaintiff sued both the bar chain and the web developers and the host, claiming they were both responsible for the accessibility of the site. Some of the issues I mentioned about overlays also apply to plugins. Installing an accessibility plugin doesn't suddenly make your site accessible. Many of them can detect certain issues, and some may fix some of the found issues as well. But the use of them doesn't negate the need for manual checking. And they're not going to fix your site's code. Accessibility is so much more than that. So slapping a plugin on a site doesn't make it accessible. A lot of plugins add controls to the front end of the site to allow the user to adjust the text size, contrast, and so forth. But they really don't add anything for people who are already using some form of assistive technology or features that are inherently built into their operating system. Accessibility starts with the proper foundation. It starts with the code. Overlays and plugins, when those plugins are used without taking the proper additional measures, provide a false sense of security and just delay the inevitable. Remediation and educating and training those who add or modify the content on the site in how to properly format their content. Remediation means fixing the site, modifying the site's code and the page content, and making it compliant with accessibility guidelines. So remediation and training are part of a much more robust long-term solution. When you understand and you design and code for accessibility, instead of dismissing it by the wayside with an automated tool that doesn't fix things anyway, it provides a much better user experience and a better, more robust, and properly built website. And the functionality and the look of the site are in your control and the client's control. If you want to learn more about creating and remediating accessible websites, I invite you to check out my website accessibility course at academy.creative-boost.com. I'll help you understand accessibility, and I will teach you my process for designing and building accessible websites and how to talk to a client or a prospect about accessibility, some ways I protect myself in my contracts, and how to earn recurring revenue and help your client with accessibility, and much more. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Accessibility is a great way to stand out from other web designers and developers, which can give you a competitive edge, especially when you're the one bringing it up and others aren't. And don't think that ignoring accessibility relieves you of any responsibility. You just got to know about this stuff as a web designer and developer. So again, get the details about my website accessibility course at academy.creative-boost.com, and feel free to shoot over any questions to me at info@creative-boost.com. If you liked this content, please leave a review and share it on social media. Do you need help enhancing your design skills or working through a freelancing issue? Go to creative-boost.com to apply for design mentoring. Also, check out the free resources and join us in the Design Domination Facebook group.